Thank you, Tamiya. So good morning, everyone. We'll just get started since most of us are already here. Um, as you all know, we're joined this morning slash afternoon, evening for some of us. We're joined by Beth Koigi, and Tamiya is going to introduce her, and we will have some time with Beth. She will tell us a little bit about her story, her background, the incredible company and innovation that she's been working on. And then we'll have some time for questions with Beth. So as usual, just keep some questions in mind and then feel free to send them in the chat once she's done talking. Or if things come up whilst she's talking, you can start sending them in as well. And so we'll have time for Q&A with her. And then we'll actually transition into our pods. We're going to have some time for in our small groups today so that we can actually think through some of the themes that Beth brings up around water issues. So we'll start doing some research into what are the most vital water issues in our own communities. And your TAs will facilitate those breakout rooms. But for now, we have time with Beth. Tamiya, would you like to introduce her?
Yeah, hello. Hi, Beth. Thank you for being with us. I'm super excited to introduce Beth. She is a Kenyan development specialist who invented Magic Water, a technology that turns moisture into potable water. Using solar technology, Magic Water has brought clean water to drought-ravaged parts of Eastern Africa. The Magic Water system can collect 100 liters of water a day and has become a super important source of potable water to off-grid communities. The company was featured in the documentary Brave Blue World by Matt Damon and was celebrated in the Women in Science feature of the February-March 2021 issue of Forbes Africa. It is an absolute honor to hear her speak today.
Thank you so much for the amazing introduction, Tamiya. And it's an honor for me to be here. And, every day, you get to meet new people, and I'm very excited. I'm feeling honored to meet everyone here. And I think, I'll start by, giving a bit of my background and how I came about to, starting Magic Water. Also, forgive me, my network is a bit low. It's quite rainy right now, and I'm hiding somewhere. But yeah, I'm hoping the connection will be okay. So I am a Kenyan. I live in Nairobi, and my journey began when I was doing my my university undergraduate. When I was in my third year. So I went to the university in the eastern part of Kenya, near Mount Kenya. And basically the region has a lot of, it's very mountainous. We have a lot of rivers. And one of the challenges that I encountered there that, drove me to the direction of water was, the water, there was a lot of runoff since the region is very mountainous. So we'll get a lot of soil erosion. So, and the university where I used to school, they used to pump the water directly from the river. So there was a lot of silt in that water. So I started by making filters in my dorm room, which eventually I started selling to other students. And I did that for 2 years, I think, as a company for 2 years, that is in 2014, 2015. And actually a huge part of 2016. So in the end of 2016, 2017, we had an acute drought in sub-Saharan Africa. I think, if you are in either South Africa or East Africa or, the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, you can relate to this. We had an acute drought. This was the same period that, Cape Town was approaching day zero. So there was a huge drought, and, where I used to stay then, we get like huge water rationing like for 6 months. So basically you depend on water vendors who sell the water as they wish. So the water became very expensive, and that is the first time I felt, water should be a basic human right. It's something you can't live without, and it's something that you need for your daily needs, and it's something that you're not supposed to pay very expensively for. So I started thinking about solutions that I could come up and decentralize the water. So wherever you are able to access your basic need, the amount of water that you need for basic needs, that is drinking and cooking. And at the same time, with that idea, I applied for a program in California, Singularity University. So basically, the major role for this program was, to bring together inventors or innovators into one place and have them, connect and, start this idea and do prototypes and build something either together or, something that you can bring back home. So I did that. I was sponsored by Google at that point. And I spent 4 months in California, Mountain View, at NASA Research Center, basically the whole period. And that's where I met my co-founders, but basically the whole period we were just doing prototyping. So, some of the things that, I was able to come up. So previously I used to make water filters, but these are things that, are easy to make, are things that you don't require a lot of, research and development to build, but this technology is quite, that now I want to make is quite advanced and, requires a lot of, years and money for research and development. So first and foremost, what we did, we created a minimum viable product. A minimum viable product is a product that specifically resembles your final product. It's not there yet, but can function as your final product. So basically what we did, we bought a desiccant, which is basically works the same way as an atmospheric water generator. And with that, I came back to Kenya and started doing like pilots and, I held a lot of focus discussions with communities just to understand what is their point of view. Would they use such kind of technology? Does it make sense for them? What would they like to see? So one thing that we found out was, people wanted, it was very critical for us to create a device that was producing a lot of water. So our initial MVP was like 10 liters per day. So we needed at least 1,000 liters per day in our system. So all this information help us build what we have now. And with that, we are able to create, our first prototypes. And I'll talk a bit more about them. But, that's a whole journey of, creating a company, a startup. But, now from the MVP and all those focus group discussions and getting all this information, now you have to build a company that is actually working, that is actually, that have, revenue. And what we did, because, Magic Water then, we had zero funding. We are a company that has been founded by youth. Basically, you don't have any savings, you don't have literally nothing. And you're trying to create this product. Actually, it's very expensive to create a niche product. So what we decided, we partnered with other companies that were actually interested in this technology and had a bit more research and a bit more money to actually do the research. And what we did, we gave them what we wanted, the device specifications. And with that, we were able to create our first device, and that was 50 liters per day device, which we installed here in Nairobi, like a few kilometers from Nairobi, in a children's home, just to have people drink the water from the system, give us feedback on how the water tastes, just general feedback for this product. And that, I think, fast forward, we are able to create devices. We have a wide range of devices. We have 50 liters per day. We have 100 liters per day. We have 120. We have 500. We have 1,000 liters. But at the same time, we encountered so many challenges, including, now most of our markets are extremely off the grid. So these are regions where you don't have, power connection. You need the system to be 100% solar powered. And I think you may have an idea that solar systems are quite expensive. The solar panels themselves are affordable, but now when we include the buses, they're quite expensive. So we have had that challenges. And one of our biggest device is like 9 kilowatt hours. So it's a 3-phase device. So he has a huge consumption for energy. So some of those are challenges that even now as a company we still face. And every time you do anything, you have a challenge that you are trying to solve. Most of our installation are around 800 kilometers from Nairobi. That's where our warehouse is. That means that we cannot easily go to the field to do maintenance. And that's how now we decided to install sensors. So basically, you are able to monitor the performance of this device from Nairobi. You are able to track Nairobi, and you're able to see if somebody has moved the device, and also call now the people who are actually, on the ground, and do the maintenance on phone. So every time we have had challenges here and there, nothing is simple, and every day we have a challenge that we are trying to solve. And like I mentioned, running a startup is not a one direction kind of path. It goes, in all direction, and I think you try to solve challenges as they come. But in a nutshell, that is a summary of how I started Magic Water with my two other co-founders. And I'm happy to go into more details specifically on what you would want to hear in terms of my journey and a startup and creating a product from scratch. Thank you. Back to Natasha.
Hi, Beth. Thank you so much for that. It's really cool to hear your story of, going from just, having an idea to actually then having a minimum viable product, and how you met your co-founders as well. Everyone can feel free to start sending questions in the chat. So some of what you said was, it was hard for us to hear. What I'm finding is that it's best when you're speaking close to the microphone. I'm not sure if you're using your phone. But yeah, feel free everyone to start sending questions in the chat about Beth's work and her inventions. I see that we have a question already. So Daniel, would you like to ask Beth your question?
No, it's not a question, just a comment. But
Oh.
I have one question already. I will ask it. In your opinion, on which aspect of the water resource, quantity, quality, availability, or accessibility should we focus more attention and show more creativity and ingenuity to face the water shortage by 2025? That's my question.
Thank you, Daniel, for that question. I think that is a very relevant question, but it's different in every region. There's no one solution to water issues. Let me just say that. Like, desalination is not the answer to water issues, or filtration is not the only solution to water issues. So there are many issues that are related to water, and they differ from one region to the other. There are some places, like in Kenya, I know there are many places with water issues, and mostly it's related to water resource management. So anything on water resource management would work there. And I would like to mention, like, even for us, we don't work everywhere in Kenya. Like, most of the regions that we work in are places like Turkana, Mandera, Wajir. So these are off-grid regions. And these regions do not necessarily have, like, the ground water is, very deep and also has very high levels of fluoride and arsenic. So filtration there is impossible, and it's very expensive. And also we don't have like a water body nearby. So you find like our solution is more fit there than it's fit in Nairobi, because Nairobi it's water filtration or water resource management. So I think it differs with one place to the other. And it's not just a country to another country. It can be like a small region to another small region. So water issues are very different, and there is no one solution for this problem.
So we thank you for that. Thank you for that answer, Beth. So we have quite a few questions in the chat, just so you know. So Gabby, would you like to ask your question? I love that one.
Sorry. Thank you, Beth, for your talk. I was just curious about what your plans are for the next, I guess, few years, for the future of magic and where you see your company going.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Gabby. I think for now, our biggest challenge, there are two challenges. One is the cost of our device. So our device, like the smallest unit, is like $900, which is very expensive. And this has to do with our production capacity. We are not yet large-scale producers, so our goal for the next few years is to reduce that cost, like by a lot. And then our second challenge is the energy consumption. Like I mentioned, like our biggest device is 9 kilowatt hours, so that's a huge energy consumption. So that is something that we are trying to look in to reduce that amount of power consumption and look for another solution that is actually, more energy efficient.
Thank you so much, Beth. Everyone, can you just feel free to unmute yourself when it's your turn? We'll just go in the order of the way the questions have been sent in the chat. So the next few questions are from Ella, Nupu, Maria, and then Danya. They're all very different questions, so I'd love for you all to just ask them. And feel free to unmute yourself when Beth is done talking.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for being here today, Beth. So this kind of goes directly with your answer to the previous question, but I was wondering if you have any like particular plans in order to reduce the costs of these devices. And I was reading online that this has to do with, I think, like reducing the cost of solar panels, and just like how do you plan on going about that?
There are so many reasons why the cost of our devices are high. And some of these reasons are: one, we only do like 70% assembly in Kenya. So we don't do like the whole system in Kenya. So we import some part of it when it's some done. So our main goal is to have the whole assembly line in Kenya and probably buy everything locally. We have already seen most of these things are available here. And the other thing is, but this we have no control. Usually in Kenya, any water's product is 60% VAT exempt. So previously, before COVID, we never used to pay the 16% VAT. But during COVID or after that, I think the government had a lot of financial issues, so they increased, they put VAT on everything, so including our devices, which makes it very, very difficult for us to reduce the price of this device. So that we have no control over. But generally, if we source everything locally, we are able to reduce that cost. And also the other thing is, the energy consumption. So it's cheaper for the clients themselves to use this device. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning that those are our two challenges, because they go hand in hand.
Hi, thank you for being here. Thank you for your talk. And maybe it's a little bit also related to the points that you already mentioned just in your end of your last answer. But what were the biggest obstacles you overcame during the product realization process?
So one, it's actually having a ready product. It has been a long journey for us settling with one product. And, we have done a lot of prototyping and used a lot of resources in the initial prototyping journey. And most of these things include performance. This device, you may have a device that the specification is 1,000 liters, but it's only producing 80 liters of water per day. So making sure that our device performs was quite difficult. And also considering the regions that we work in, are very dry. They are basically arid regions. So the humidity can go as low as 20%. So we don't have so much to work in. So we have to optimize this device to perform its best at those climatic conditions. So it was quite difficult in the initial times, and some of these regions are quite far away. And I'll give an example. Like we have a device, a 500-liter device, which in Nairobi produces like 700 liters per day, which is a lot. It's way above the capacity. But now when we take it on the field, it only produces like 200 liters. And this has to do with environmental factors and also different seasons. So those are the things that are quite hard for us to design this device towards, like, having a device that performs on optimal. And at the same time, also the device performance is affected by temperature. So when Nairobi is cold but very high in humidity, it's then not again producing water. But when you go to a hotter place and high humidity, it's producing a lot of water. So having, those kind of, different conditions, and, creating a product that is able to work with those conditions was quite difficult.
Okay, hello. Thank you so much for your talk. And I am wondering if you can tell us how does your filter of water work? That because you mentioned that in your university you started with a filter of water, and yes, I want to know how it works.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good question, Maria. Actually, I used to use different kind of filters. So one was ceramic. So basically, this is like a pot that is drinking water slowly. And the other one I used activated carbon, basically. So basically, I used those two mostly, and then I would add, sodium hypochlorite acid, which is basically like able to remove bacteria. Or some things that I used to buy, they were called like silver pellets. So you would either like combine them with clay. So I used to use different ways of water filtration at that point.
Good morning. My question was, your product uses solar power and desiccants like silica gel. Silica gel is a colloidal form of silicon dioxide, and rice straw has a very high percentage of that. Could it be processed to make the desiccants needed for your product?
So I forgot to mention this, but during our MVP, when we created our minimum viable product, one of the challenges that we found using desiccant is that you require a huge surface area to produce a very small amount of water. So basically, you would need like several rooftops to produce like 1,000 liters of water. So we had a huge challenge of surface area with desiccant. And with desiccant, we were able to create just a small amount of water, like 10 liters of water. So we moved away from desiccant, and specifically we were using molecular sieve mostly at that point. But we moved away from desiccant, and now we basically use condensation. Yeah.
Caesar, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, Beth. Nupu kind of touched some of my questions already with regards to the obstacles you have to put up with in beginning Magic Water. My interest would be, did you have to put up with any significant oppositions, particularly, for example, in terms of challenges to the patents of the technology, or oppositions, for example, from businesses that have tie-up with corporate, bigger corporate tie-ups whose interest may be threatened when you begin this venture, when you begin or even
yeah.
go ahead, please.
Is that it for your question, Caesar?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. I think these challenges are quite common for smaller companies. And some of the bigger issues that we faced are basically the way people perceive this technology, the users themselves. So basically, in communities that we work with, they believe a lot in witchcraft. So these devices were perceived as one. So overcoming that was a huge challenge, and trying to explain what the technology does. And the other thing, we have had bigger companies that are actually dealing with atmospheric water generators that are actually heavily funded, who actually try to take some of our stuff or poach the stuff. So you find like, some staff are offered like really nice, salaries with these companies. So those are the challenges that we are facing even now. They're quite common. And I think those are the most challenges that we have faced. In regards to patent, we have applied patents in Kenya only. So Kenya is not that, we don't have an international patent, I would say. Kenya is not that, there wasn't that much competition, to be sincere. But there is a lot of companies and huge companies that are heavily funded coming into Africa. And, most of the companies that are trying to invest in Africa, they usually like starting in Kenya because of Kenya is central to most of the regions. So we have had a lot of challenges with the bigger companies trying to enter into the market. When we are doing any project like, when we are doing any project like with the UN, they try to watch the staff. So we have had such kind of challenges here and there, specifically. Okay.
Thank you for that, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah. Sanjana, would you like to ask your question? I think Sanjana had trouble last Saturday as well. Oh, we can't hear you. Sorry, that's very strange. Okay, so Beth, Sanjana's question is, she wants to learn about how magic water can remain accessible to those who need it most, while also having a sustainable/viable business model that can fund setting up the units.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very good question. The hardest thing for a company is not just starting up, but creating a viable business model or a sustainable business model. And for us, we have struggled with that for the past 3 years, because the market that we work in, mostly the people are low income, and you want to create something that is affordable, that anyone can access, and creating a sustainable business model around that has been very difficult. And just to mention, we don't produce much water. Essentially, like, we produce 1,000 liters of water, like, on the maximum. Like, our biggest device, it's 1,000 liters of water per day. So basically, until right now, until this year, that's when we started exploring using pay-as-you-go model and having, setting up water kiosks or small water shops within these communities. But previously, we used to sell the devices, which is not actually a sustainable business model. And this is also another challenge that we are facing. Creating a sustainable business model is quite difficult, and also having an innovative business model in such kind of market. And also answering the question, who pays? It's quite difficult. Who pays? Who pays for what? It's actually a very difficult question for any company. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Stephen, may you ask your question?
Yes, hello. Thank you for the really good talk. I really enjoyed reading up on your work as well. It seemed really fascinating. My question was, obviously you use these big devices which extract moisture from the air. What are the environmental impacts from that? Obviously it depends on the scale, but if you do want to upscale it, how does it affect the local environment? Does it affect rainfall patterns for like farming and stuff like that? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that question. I think this is one question that we get a lot. First, I would like you to conceptualize how much water there is in the atmosphere. So all the rivers around the world times 6. So that's a lot of water. That's a lot of fresh water that is actually not utilized. So it would take like millions and millions of atmospheric water generators to actually make an impact on the environment. And most of our devices are actually outdoor. So unless you're in a place where there is zero wind, and in most of these regions, it's very windy. And, you know, so far there hasn't been, you know, known impact on the environment. And the only thing that we get from the environment is actually the humidity itself. And there is so much of it. And then the other question that, or the other, you know, thing that you may ask next is the quality of that water. Because, you know, we work in regions where it's very dusty, it's very windy. So all our devices have like these air filters that have to be washed weekly, depending on how much dust gets into the device. And then basically the water is, ideally, the water is supposed to be distilled, but you know, you can't, it's hard to not, it's hard not to have other impurities get into the machine and into the water tank. So we do install filtration system at the point of collection. And we also add a mineralization cartilage if the water is for drinking. There are some who are using it for hydroponics, aquaponics. So for that, we don't add the mineralization, but we have the filtration system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Yeah. So we have, I'm seeing in the chat that we have one more question from Ria. And I'm going to ask her question because she mentioned that to me, that her internet connection is not great. So her question is, given the scale at which climate change and anthropogenic change are occurring and evolving, do you think your device is sustainable? And do you think you'll have to revise or adjust it for future conditions? So I guess thinking about long-term sort of climate change.
Yeah, and that's a very good question, I think. So one of the reasons why, one of the effects of climate change is that there's higher humidity. You know, when the water evaporates, it should rain somewhere. So right now, the air is increasing its capacity to hold more water, and that's why there is increasing global temperature. So if there is any issue with climate change, it will be like we'll have higher humidity, which is not ideal. So I think if more, there will be need of these machines to dehumidify the air. So I think what we need to revise in terms of these devices to make them more ideal or more sustainable in terms of the energy consumption, so that they become cheaper. They become like just buying a water dispenser or something simple, just like any household appliances. I don't know if that answered your question.
Thank you for that answer, Beth. Ria, feel free to send in the chat if you have any thoughts to add. But Beth, we are just so honored to have been able to spend this time with you and to hear the incredible work that you and your team have been doing. It's truly remarkable. And I personally was so just inspired and in awe when I discovered you and your work. And so we couldn't be more grateful. Thank you for spending this time with us. And if the students have any further questions, may I send those to you over email? That's something we've been doing, because we often have new questions coming up after they talk with you and spend more time learning about the work that you've been doing. So thank you for your time. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. Please share my email address with anyone who have a question. We do take a lot of internship from, people who want to come and help. So feel free to share my email address.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you so much, Beth, and have a beautiful week.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Wow. Wonderful questions, everyone. Thank you for sending those in the chat. I love that we had a lot of, similar themes, but very unique questions today. And, as Beth mentioned, she's open to stay in touch. So I'll be sending her email in the chat when we wrap up today. But for now, we're actually going to go into our breakouts with our pods and spend some time thinking through water issues in our own communities. I'm sure we all kind of can wrap our heads around how important water is and how important equitable water access is, especially after hearing Beth speak about the kind of work that she's been doing. And so, yeah, your TAs will facilitate those conversations, but we have some guiding questions that we'd like you to just spend some time researching and really thinking through, what's most pressing in the context of where you live with regard to water rights, water access, water issues. So we'll spend some time just in our groups thinking through that and thinking through potential solutions, potential ideas that we can sort of support each other with. And it's really just an exercise to get us thinking through identifying problems or needs or challenges and starting to solve them, starting to wrap our heads around solving them and supporting each other in that process. So I'm going to send us into breakout room now. Welcome. Thank you. And welcome back, everyone. I would love to take some sort of key takeaways from each group, and we'll just go in the order that I established the breakout rooms in. So we'll start with someone from Ella's group. If you could share a little bit about what you guys discussed and ideas that you came up with. Someone from Ella's group.
Yeah, I can share. So, well, each of us kind of discussed, the main issue in her zone, and what we agreed on, I think, is that we're kind of skeptical about the idea of approaching and kind of finding an individual solution. Very much, I guess we agreed on, the need to collaborate and define a solution that was, I guess, so like from a more general and collaborative perspective instead of, yes, a bottom-up one, let's say. And then in the end, we were kind of reflecting on the importance of realizing, dismantling the very concept of water understood as a commodity. And we shared our thoughts, and we said, there's a need to realize that we are water, we're made of water, and we can't live without water. And if that is something, it's something that all people were able to realize, we had much less issues, water issues. And so that's basically the summary. But then we were talking about, water pollution and problems with the water supply system, and what else? Water accessibility. So community not being able to access water, and also about water supply and about, people not being aware of how much importance water has in our society, because they kind of used to have water there anytime they want. So we were talking about, you know, different systems and solutions that kind of, I don't know, I guess they give, you have access to a given amount of water per day, but that's it. So, you know, you could have your 20 minutes shower, but then you won't be able to have any drinkable water for the rest of the day. And that will make you, you know, kind of reevaluate your priorities and I guess rethink of your relationship with water and rethink of your positionality in such an issue. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's really amazing. It sounds like you had a very rich discussion. Just fascinating to hear that your group kind of went from the larger picture of how we're addressing water solutions in the first place and recognizing the need for that to be a collective journey, to water as, you know, understanding that we are made of water, and then kind of going into the more detailed, like how can we start to recognize that, you know, and change our behaviors if we were given a limited, you know, set amount of water per day. Fascinating. Thank you for sharing, Cecilia. Really appreciate that. And I'd love to hear from Gabby's group. Someone from Gabby's group could come up and share.
Yeah, our group were discussing about firstly the main problems that we have in our communities related to the water, and we mentioned that it is important to take into account the quality of our water, also the long terms of droughts, because it affects many communities because they don't have access to drinking water. Another problem is the release of wastewater in water bodies, for example, in lakes or in rivers because of activities like agriculture or, for example, industries, or actually in our homes. We don't know exactly, for example, that the oil, we don't have to take I don't know, like flutes into the water because it is a pollutant. But we, at the end of the conversation, talked about the importance of to be educated in those kind of topics, because sometimes, because we don't know what is happening in our communities with our water, we don't know what we can do. And also start with the causes of those problems. And then we can find solutions like a whole community. And again, the connection and the union, it's important in this problem. And finally, something that we were talking about is like many ideas to reduce the use of clean water in agriculture. And it's, for example, reuse water from another activities. And maybe we can think in another problems and solve them at the same time. For example, thinking about, okay, we can use this water because it is not drinking water. Okay, I am not going to drink it, but we can use in another things, for example, in washing our clothes or in the bathrooms, something like that. And that's it.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, it sounds like, again, you guys were thinking at sort of that larger scale. How do we even think about solutions in the first place in ways that are innovative? And it sounds like your group spent some time thinking through, you know, multifaceted solutions that have lots of different angles to address some of those root causes. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Could we hear from Grace's group as well?
Okay, I can share. All right. Okay. Okay, coming from Grace's group, although we're not able to exhaust all because about 3 of us had some connection problems. So basically, we talked about what the vital water issue. It's ranged from water shortage, then the tap water that is available, not safety to drink, and most times from Philadelphia, water is usually commercialized, becoming a rare commodity, therefore becoming undrinkable. So also problem from greens growing in the water. Then all these problems ranged from population, increase in population, a lot of persons are coming, therefore the water is no longer available and all that. Then bacteria, then coming from infiltration systems, because most water systems are piped, so a lot of bacteria, pesticides are usually in the water, therefore making the water undrinkable. Then also we had a problems from farming industries. I think that's why we were having greens in the water. Then basically where we have water, there's another one of the students that mentioned the lack of that the water usually have color, because of high iron concentration. So basically it's from poor waste management. People always dump their waste, sewage and plastics into the water, and then oil pollution, and the water table is actually high. So that makes the water most times not coming out to be fine. And who are those people affected from our groups? From is that water becomes very expensive for people to buy because there are larger population. So people tend to not to have water. So that means it's now a scarce commodity. So it's survival of the fittest, who gets first, and it becomes very expensive. So people end up, choosing a lesser option, which is tap water. And they have the scenario of, after all, if they get sick, they could get treated. So they end up, choosing tap water instead of the normal water. Then from Finland, nothing much is affected, maybe coming from farming system and all that. So in summary, like I said, we had some connection issues, so we couldn't exhaust all the questions. But from summary, when we were allotted the time, we found out that we summarized that water has poverty issues, it has economic issues, it has health issues. So for water sustainability, it is best to focus on one and begin somewhere to, find solutions. Thank you.
Thanks, Amarachi. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is that a lot of the groups have been thinking through water pollution specifically as an issue, and kind of starting to think through solutions around that. Obviously, this is a really short amount of time, and it's really just to start kind of scratching the surface and digging into our own communities and seeing what's actually happening. So I really appreciate that you were able to give the scope of what your group was discussing. Tamiya and Warren's group, could we have someone sharing what you guys talked about? Seems that Takunda had to leave, so it's Vittoria and Ria.
Yeah, Vittorio, do you think you would be able to share out? I don't think Ria can still.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah. No, I mean, we talked about a lot of different things. Mostly, I think that it was like really interesting to me how like it was really different issues with water depending on where we lived and where we were from. Because like where, for example, for me, we focused on issues that were much about, for example, urban planning or infrastructure, inside from like the urban, but a lot of people were from a completely different context, and the issues and the solutions were completely different, and it was super interesting. And I think what we came up with that was really important was like focusing on education But there were a lot of different ways to do it. I think Sirna, I think that she mentioned a way to kind of have kind of like a bottom-up project to educate the people about all these issues, and that was super interesting. I mean, but apart from that, I think that we focus also on all the problems such as like droughts, climate change, how it affects the communities and cities and stuff like that. So yeah, it was super interesting to see all these different contexts.
Wow, thanks, Vittorio. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's part of the what's so interesting and dynamic about this course is that we're all in such different contexts, and water issues in one place might be completely different to in another. And then there's also a lot of similarities. Like I'm hearing everyone mentioning, you know, talking through pollution issues, talking through education as a potential solution. And I love that bottom-up idea as well. Could we hear from Leah's group, please?
So I was hoping Macy could share out for us, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I can share for us. So one thing that we most commonly talked about was just water shortages related to droughts. And kind of, I would say the most interesting thing that we talked about, in my opinion, was Stefan mentioned that there in his hometown, some of the farms actually use certain fertilizers that are supposed to reduce the amount of water needed. And this actually leads to pollution in the oceans and algae blooms just because of the fertilizer runoff. And so I was kind of fascinated by the connection and overlap of those two things in regards to kind of climate change and droughts. Also might be connected to pollution in our oceans or in our river systems. And so, yeah, we talked about that. And then we also talked about how there's a lot of emphasis in regards to water shortages placed on individuals. Like you have to take 5-minute showers, or you need to kind of be careful when you're running your sprinklers, which are all great things, but there's a little bit less emphasis placed on larger corporations and businesses and different agencies, because they might be able to kind of offset a lot of individual responsibilities and efforts that people are making. So that was another point that we talked about in regards to water shortages and how droughts are affecting them.
Thank you for that, Macy. I'm really glad that your group got to that point about the role of our personal actions and how sometimes that can detract focus or attention from these larger structures like governments, corporations, businesses that are actually having a much more vast impact. So yeah, and that's something that O'Regan in our climate justice workshop, if you all remember, brought up, that very rarely is personal action kind of the most vital solution. So just as we move forward thinking through solutions and ideas together, I want us to sort of start thinking about our climate action projects that we'll be creating in this course. And we've actually sent out a series of questions that we'd love for you all to answer by the end of the week via email to Judy and I. I posted the assignment in the Google Classroom. I recognize that, some of us have never used Google Classroom before, and that's totally fine. You don't have to submit the assignment on Google Classroom if that's not accessible to you, but please do email us your responses to those questions about your climate action projects. That way we can actually put you in your climate action project groups for our session next Saturday, when we'll be giving time to actually really start digging into those. And the idea is to just come up with 1 or 2 ideas that you really, really care about and that you think will be meaningful for you to focus on and for your community. So you can go by identifying a need in your community, or you could also go by what you're most passionate about, what you actually think you might be able to contribute in terms of your existing skills as well. Feel free to send any questions about that assignment to me or Judy via email. And I'm sending out Beth's email address right now. So again, that's Friday morning. We'd love for you to send those in Pacific time, so that Friday afternoon we can sort of sort you into the groups that you'll be working in, especially in the latter part of the course. I also sent out a schedule this past Saturday after class. So we now have a master schedule document that you can, whenever you need to see what's happening in the course, just go into that document. I'll send the link right now. But just wanted to make sure that everybody has that. It's just a schedule where you can see what's happening. If there's a community gathering that week, the community gatherings are optional. We had our first one a couple weeks ago and it was amazing. We have another one coming up this week, and they're just really free time to kind of relax and talk together outside of the kind of scheduled session times. So feel free to come to those if you have time and if you want to kind of get to know other people in the course a bit better. But yeah, that's all from me for now. Thank you everyone for a wonderful session today and for your amazing questions for Beth. I think she definitely really appreciated them, and feel free to stay in touch with her. Her email's in the chat. And I'll see you on Saturday.